Welcome to another episode of the Cat Breeding for Beginners podcast. I'm Pamela and I breed British Shorthairs in Perth, Western Australia. I have a real passion for cat breeding and exhibiting, and I want to share my knowledge and experience with you. I'm on a mission to help new cat breeders go from feeling intimidated, confused and having trouble getting started to confidently breeding happy and healthy cats whilst enjoying this amazing hobby. Before we get started, make sure you visit my website and download your copy of my helpful guide, Advice to New Breeders, where experienced breeders share some great tips they wish someone told them when they started breeding. You can find the link on my homepage at www.catbreedingforbeginners.com. Just look for the picture of Angelica with her kittens. What's the difference between a show cat and a breeding cat? Well, that's a really interesting question, and I do get asked this a lot. I've been asked this several times in my new cat breeders club, and I thought maybe it's time for me to actually put out a podcast on this topic so that everybody else can find out the answer too. The answer is pretty simple. Sometimes nothing. A show cat and a breeding cat are going to be the same cat. We have entire classes at shows where we're using our breeding cats as our show cats. So obviously in that situation, they're both the same. But you can have the situation where a breeding cat might not necessarily make for a good show cat. And I know you're probably thinking, well, if it's not going to be a good show cat, then why would you want to breed from it? Well, there can be a lot of reasons why, and I'm going to tell you. Now, one of the first things is that particular cat may have a fault, and that fault might be something that it has that it can't be shown. For whatever reason, the breed standard for that cat says that particular thing is a fault. An example of that, I can think of a really good example of that actually. I don't know that it's actually written in the breed standard anywhere, but I have a cat that has a fault that would make a fabulous show cat, except she has a fault. She only has one eye. She can't be a show cat with one eye. Pretty sure all the standards refer to eyes, plural. She only has one. She lost her eye. She had a congenital tumour when she was a baby and she had to have her eye taken out before it turned cancerous. So nothing genetic, no reason not to breed from her. She's been bred from, she's had beautiful kittens, but she cannot be a show cat because she has a thing that will stop her being able to be a show cat. She will have a fault. She will always be withheld on as a show cat. So that could be a situation. Maybe it's a mismarked cat. Maybe your particular breed standard says that your cat has to have a certain amount of white, or the white has to be in a certain place, and your cat doesn't have that. But it's not something they're necessarily going to pass on to their offspring, so it's still worth keeping them as a breeding cat, especially as everything else is perfect. Then there's another reason. The other reason might be because that cat doesn't have a show temperament. You can have the most beautiful cat ever, the most perfect cat, the cat that would win supreme at every single show it attended. But if that cat hates being at a show, you can't take it. If that cat's bitey at shows, you can't take it. We hear this all the time. Oh, my cat's perfect at home, but it comes to the show and it's absolutely feral and nearly takes the judge's head off. Those cats can't go to shows. So that might be the situation as well. It just doesn't like it. And that might make for a cat that's a perfect breeding cat but just cannot be a show cat. So that might be the situation. You might not be able to show it. So what you need to think about when you're looking at the cats that you're actually breeding is, does that cat give me something for breeding purposes? The other thing that might come up is that maybe it gives you something for breeding purposes but it has something else that you don't want. And this might be the case of a cat that has a particular trait that's very extreme. Now, maybe your cats have, let's talk ears. Maybe you've got British Shorthairs and your cats have really big ears. You're going to want to get a cat that has low ears to bring those ears down. But maybe the cat that you get that has the really good low ears also has a long tail. And you don't want the long tail. But your cats already have short tails. So it makes sense to get the cat in to get the low down ears, and that you've already got the short tails. So when you put that cat to your cats, you can be selective about what kittens you keep. And hopefully you'll get the right kitten that will have both things, and that can go on to be a show kitten. So it might be that a cat has a particular trait that you need, even though it has other traits that you don't, that prevent it from being a good show cat. So a show cat and a breeding cat can be the same thing, but they can also be, a cat can just be used for breeding. And it's fine to have cats that are used for breeding that you're not using for show. Another thing that you might have is a cat with an amazing temperament, and you might be needing temperament. So it doesn't actually matter whether, as long as that cat's, not too bad, it's still worth using that cat in your breeding program, in your breeding recipe. It's still worth using that cat in your breeding recipe because it's going to help improve the it's going to help improve the temperament of your cats. Because like we said, you can't have a good show cat if it doesn't have the temperament for it. So maybe they're going to upgrade the temperament of the cats you have. Maybe you'll take a little step backwards in type, but taking a step backwards in type and having a cat that you can show versus having the perfect cat that you can't show, I think that's a bit of a no-brainer, really. So when it comes down to it, you've got some choices to make. You can have cats at home that you're breeding from, that you're not necessarily showing from, but you can also have show cats that are not breeding cats. You might have D-sex cats. I'm showing a D-sex cat myself at the moment. He's been retired from breeding, so he's no longer a breeding cat, but he is a show cat. So you can have cats that are exclusively show cats, and you can have cats that are exclusively breeding cats, and you can have cats that are in between and do both jobs. The multi-purpose cat, maybe you'd call it. And that's a bit of an explanation of what's the difference between a show cat and a breeding cat. A breeding cat, when people talk about breeding cats, they're talking about a cat normally that has something about it that means that it can't be a show cat, whether it's its temperament, whether it's something to do with its type, whether it's got a show fault. There's just something about it that you can't use to take it to shows. But you can use it for breeding, and it does a really great thing for you when you do use it for breeding. There you go. That's just a little explanation for you, and I hope you found it helpful. Thanks for listening. Make sure you visit www.catbreedingforbeginners.com, where you can find articles, guides, courses and more. Plus, make sure you check out my amazing New Cat Breeders Club. It's a supportive space where new cat breeders can learn, share and help each other. I only take new members a few times a year, so sign up to make sure you don't miss out.